Welcome to Ink and Magic, a podcast where we read and discuss the writing craft, world building, and romance of paranormal and fantasy novels.
If you love books with bite, set in worlds of magic and mayhem, then you're in the right place. My name's Nikisha Shanae. I go by an S.
And I'm Leslie. I write as Elle Penelope. And welcome to the show.
Hey, Leslie!
Hey, Inez. We are back with book 14 of Side Changeling. We've made it to book 14. We're almost at the end of season 1. I can't believe it.
Yeah. I always thought that season 1 ended with the fall of silence, but silence has fallen in these last couple of books.
Mm-hmm.
But
And
you
yeah,
can
we're in
feel the sea change.
We're in the aftermath, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, so definitely. But it's interesting. Like, I don't know exactly, we've got one book left in this season. What is the end game of the season? You know what
Yes.
I mean? Yeah,
I completely agree with you because I thought the end game was end of silence. So
right.
I'm like, what is she about to do?
And this book is different than the others. And I think the next one is going to be different too. And we can talk about that as we go on. But because I've read one of Nalini Singh's thrillers, and I look back at the dates and see, is this about the time when she started writing the thrillers? Because it
It's
feels
very
like
thriller-y.
she's moving into a different style
Yep.
of fiction. There's still a strong romance,
Yep.
but I'm not sure if this is even really a romance novel,
That's a very fair point.
Nothing taken away from the book. It's just maybe her interests changed. She was like, I've done 13 of these. What can I do differently? Because I feel that as an author. But yeah, we're wider cast of characters. I mean, we've had check-ins with lots of people, but this is vast. This is like epic.
You could have taken the romance story out of this book and it would have still held.
Mm,
It would have
yeah,
held as a suspense story at
right.
least.
Yeah, I think so. I agree. And I think that's what we're in for the next book too, because I did read the description of the next book this time.
You did?
I was gonna go in blind, and I was like, "Well, let me just see." And I was like, "What is," and then I read a couple of reviews, and I'm like, "Oh, okay." So this it feels like a good prelude to, this is the penultimate of the season and getting us ready. I mean, she was preparing her readers for, like, we're gonna dial down a little bit on the romance. I still love Aden and Zara, but, like, I'm gonna get you ready for something different. So follow me.
Oh, goodness gracious, Nalini, what are you about to do? Because, okay, so like I stand by what I said that you could have taken the romance out of this book because
Mhm,
this book starts off with our hero and our heroine, Aden and Zaira, being captured. And we know Aden from a number of books, but especially the last book where he is now the leader of the Arrows. And we met Zaira as well. She was leading the Venice compound.
mhm.
And these two power figures have been captured.
Right. And they wake up and they're in an unknown place and their psychic abilities are blocked. And they've had some kind of brain surgery, back alley brain surgery to implant something to block their psychic ability. So they're psychically blind.
Which I think is interesting because again, going back to my point that this could have you could take the romance out. Like if you didn't do that to them, I don't think the romance could have happened if they were still plugged into the net, if they were still inside in their community of arrows. This could not the romance of this could not have happened.
I think it's interesting because, I'm not sure about that. I think it would have taken a lot longer. These are two people that have basically been in love with each other since childhood,
Yep.
but they were silent and they're both arrows. So they needed a nudge, and this was a great nudge,
Mm-hmm.
being isolated together. And then once they escape the compound, they find this small shifter group, this shifter pack of, were they leopards? They were cats of some kind.
They were cats.
Yeah, and they hide out there because of a terrible storm, and there's no telephones, and they're still psychically blind, so they have all these good reasons to be isolated. So their relationship does grow in that environment, in that sort of, aquarium kind of environment.
But
But
wait a sec, Les, because it was so that I know you're making a point, but I just that whole sequence of them being captured, of them being interrogated, of them breaking free and then surviving
Mhm.
through this wilderness in this storm, that was action packed.
Yes. Like, I did a brief summary. That was a huge chunk of it, and it was great. I have a love-hate relationship with, like, survival stories, but
Mm,
this was the parts that I love, and he's protecting her, she's protecting him. You
mhm.
see their bond, you see that they would do anything for each other. He's carrying her, he's got a bullet in his leg, he doesn't tell her. Like, she does brain surgery on him in the forest. It's insane, it's wonderful.
It's fun and games.
Ooh,
This was their fun and games.
yeah, you're right.
This is how not only we got to know them because they knew each other. They
Mhm,
knew each other for years and years and years, and we really did not get to see them interact. But they had each other's backs through these missions. They both said in their perspectives, I would die for this person. I know this person has my back. This
mhm.
person is more important to me. They need to live. So we got to experience that in that whole sequence. That was straight up fun and games.
You're right, I did not think of it like that. And friends to lovers is not my favorite thing, but this is a great friends to lovers because they're both silent and they're both arrows, but they're so bonded and they're so devoted to each other. But the romantic conflict is that Zara is one of those people that silence was built for. She comes from a line of killers and she believes she's crazy. She was horribly abused as a child, and so she just believes she can't not break silence, but break her discipline as an arrow to have the emotions and to have a link with someone else. And it was a great romantic conflict. I wouldn't have foreseen two arrows getting together like this, especially after the
Mhm.
last book when it seemed perfect that an arrow and an empath should be together. But this was perfect too.
This was an arrow and a freaking psychopath.
Yeah.
Zyra, she was admittedly crazy.
I
And
mean,
crazy is the wrong word. She was an assailant. She was aggressive. She would take you down.
right. And she's had that rage inside of her that made her good at what she did. It's made her able to survive her childhood and arrow training, I'm sure. And she just let the rage build up. Uh, yeah, she is like the female Amos from The Expanse. Was one of my favorite characters ever. So we have Caleb Krychek, who is an Amos, and then we get the female version, which works just as well. It's less of a conscious thing because she has a conscience. She
Mhm.
actually is very compassionate and caring.
So was
But
Amos.
true, true. But Zara believes things about herself, and then she will flip. My favorite thing, I know we're skipping ahead, is when they're at the cat compound and there's a female cat who's like coming on to Aden. And Aden sees Zara coming, and Aden tells the female shifter, run now. Because I was like, Zara will murder you just for brushing against his arm. That is devotion.
It's devotion, but I wanted to talk about this. I wanted to talk about this notion of jealousy and cheating
Mm,
in romance novels. And
mhm,
I've seen authors put trigger warnings on their books. Trigger warnings that'll say, absolutely no cheating, this is safe. Or trigger warnings of or something to let people know that there is going to be some type of triggering thing happening. And then when there is even the hint of it in the book, like it's usually the hero too. What they'll say like possessive,
mhm.
alpha or something like that. And for me, it's always made me uncomfortable. Like there's a certain sexiness to it of he wants only you and nobody else can have you.
Oh, the
There's
possessiveness makes you uncomfortable.
the not okay, not the possessiveness. It's the reaction that makes me uncomfortable. So
Okay.
you have these two people who have said, I love you, and they're committed to each other. But if anything is perceived to challenge that from the outside, they snap. And
Mhm.
I know that romance helps us to work through some of our issues. And like some readers like to see, like I'm like you take down that person who dared to brush up against the hero or the heroine. Almost like you're getting your just desserts.
Okay.
But it's like I'm like they committed to each other. Why are we doing this?
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't I felt like for many romance writers, it's like, oh, it's the wish fulfillment, it's the
Mhm.
fantasy of, so possessive. No, he won't look at anyone else but you. No one else can touch you. No one else can look at you. That seems to be some people's fantasies, and it's
Mhm.
so that's more of what it is. But I know you make a good point because like if there is a commitment, if there's trust, that is, that possessiveness is an indication that there's a lack of trust.
Yes.
But I didn't
Yes.
feel that for me here. Hers wasn't a lack of trust. Hers was like, "That's mine. You can't touch it." Like she doesn't believe that Aden will ever cheat on her. I don't think any part of her thought that Aden was responding to that woman. It was more like, he is my possession, and I'm a dragon who hoards my shiny things, my pretty things. No one else can touch them. That was her inner child, her inner rage beast that just can't handle other people touching her stuff.
I agree, and I think that's a perfect thing. They dragging out.
Yeah.
When people dragging out like that, it's yours. I'm not trying to yuck anybody's yum. That just for me, it just makes it brings up doubts in me. Like
Mm.
you don't believe that they love you? Like what's going on here?
Mhm. Yeah,
Had
that's
had
valid.
to bring that up.
But yeah, I think that back to the point of, could they have fallen in love or had their relationship progress without this incident? I think eventually over time they probably would have, especially if the rest of the things had happened. So say they hadn't been kidnapped, but they still, well, it brings the question, if they hadn't been kidnapped and seen close up Remy's pack, this leopard pack, would they have created the valley? I think that was always Aiden's goal, to create a home for the arrows. And once they started mimicking changeling and human society, creating family groups, I think eventually they would have done, him and Zara would have gotten together. But whenever you're in a heightened situation, there used to be like this dating show that they would put two people together and put them through some adrenaline rush situation because that makes feelings grow faster. And I think that's true for humans, but I think that these people already were bonded so tightly that nothing could have kept them apart.
I think I respectfully disagree. I think Aiden knew his feelings, his emotions,
Mhm.
and Zara was it for him from the beginning. I believe that 1000%.
Totally.
I don't think that Zaira understood her emotions or trusted her emotions, and I definitely don't think that she thought she was worthy. That's what we spend a lot of this book of her internal conflict. I don't deserve this man.
Mm.
I will give my life for him,
Mhm.
but I don't have a heart to give to him. That's how I felt
That's true.
that she was experiencing all of this.
Yeah. No, I definitely felt that. I definitely saw that too.
And then I think with the trials that they were put through, she came to realize nobody can do this job better than I can. So screw all you. So now I'm going to be a dragon.
Yes, now I'm keeping him. Too bad. I don't deserve him, but I'm keeping him anyway. We love it.
Yes. Yes. So we do get introduced. Nalini Singh is making this world bigger. So
Yes.
we do get introduced to two new packs. We get
Yeah.
introduced to Rainfire, which is the shifters, and I liked both of these outfits. So we got introduced to Rainfire, which is another pack of cat shifters,
Mhm.
and we get introduced to Black Sea. The what? Well, we
We've
were
seen them
already kind
before.
of introduced, yeah.
Yeah, with
Um,
Mion, who is their alpha.
yeah.
When we were getting introduced to the Rainfire, it felt like it was this setup, like in a sitcom when they're gonna set up the spinoff and you meet all the new
Yep.
characters because
Yep.
the girl goes to college
Yep.
and you meet all the people who are gonna be in the new show. And I'm like, is there a spinoff with Remy and Rainfire? Do we know this?
I
Or are they
want
just
his love story right now.
Me too, absolutely. And then all of his people. We met Finn, the healer, and then there was like the woman and the guy, and all these people. They're named and they're described, and we're like, we need more of them. We get so much information about them. And JoJo, little JoJo,
Oh
like,
my
what are we
gosh.
doing with her? Is she gonna mate with one of the other leopards that we know? The dark, what's it called? I'm bad.
Dark River.
Dark River. Yes,
Snow Dancer. I know so many names.
so many names. But yes, we need JoJo to grow up and have a love story too.
We do. We do. We need all of that. So I loved the setup of Rainfire and Remy because we don't just get these two packs. We now have the arrows as a pack.
Yes,
Right?
and
And
Aiden is
we
the
have
alpha.
Aiden, and Aiden is the alpha of he's realizing again the similarities that he is the alpha of the arrows, and he's consciously trying to learn and understand how do I make these arrows more pack-like. And it was just so interesting to me that he decides to go to Remy as a mentor instead of Lucas or Hawk.
Because they're both like JV. They're on the JV team. Lucas and Hawk is the varsity team. So he wants someone on his level. And he can commit, and they make like a mastermind. They check in with each other about like, how's it going? What are you doing for this? How are we doing that? Found family, connections, relationships. the theme of the entire series just really explodes in this book because it's all
Yes.
about working together. It's all about connection. It's all about taking these divisions and like just overcoming them.
So much so that, again, you guys know we skip around. So much so that Aiden decides to have just the way that Dark River and Snow Dancer had their packs intermingling and had their like
Mm.
little team dances and stuff like that. They decide to do the same thing with the Arrow youth
Yeah.
and the Rainfire youth. And it was so funny too because they sit and they start to talk about, well, what do we do when because shifters are touchy feely, they're aggressive, and the Psy are not. And they I remember Remy was saying, if a Psy says no, either because they don't think that they are allowed or for whatever reason, but they don't necessarily mean it because they don't really understand like
Yeah.
these passes that will be made at them, the shifters know, oh, you said no, okay, well then I'm going away.
And
And
they will
so
never
that's
come
it.
back. Yeah.
It was fascinating to hear.
And he was
Yeah.
like, "Oh, I never thought of that." Yeah, juveniles, teenagers, they have hormones. They're gonna wanna date and do stuff, and we're gonna have to deal with that and for the first time ever in 100 years. So, yeah.
Yes. Yes.
They did it the trope, there's only one bed when they were at, Rainfire, which is also very cool because they were recovering, they've been healed by the, Rainfire healers, and they get to their own little area where there's only one bed, and that's where they sort of discover they don't have sex or anything, but they have some sort of intimate physical
They have
contact.
intimacy
Yeah.
where they hadn't before. And this, we were talking about how these books are now starting to become party lines. Really, they were starting to become party lines after book 2.
Yeah,
Right? But it's really a party line. Like this is maybe the longest book so far.
I think
Definitely
so.
so far in the series.
Yeah.
I think this book and the next book are like the two longest books. But it's a party line, and it bothered me
And
in
basics.
thank you, Vasic's book, because I felt like the party line was interrupting the romance.
Mhm.
For me, it didn't bother me so much in this book because there was that whole chunk of captivity where it was just the two of them against the world, and
Yeah.
I got that. And they declared they got it. They declared, I have feelings for you, even though it was still rocky. All that got declared before the party line got really busy, at least for me.
No, you're right. Yeah, and the party line doesn't necessarily bother me as long as I'm grounded and it doesn't feel like my head is spinning. And so this was just like I said, it was epic. It was vast. You're getting people you're meeting a lot of new people for the first
Hmm.
time. But I think she manages it well because it's very purposeful. Like we meet the Moscow wolves who we've
Yes.
heard about, but we actually see them like, oh gosh, but then they kind of go away. Like nobody's there for too long. It's not everybody doesn't have a plot line. They're there for a reason.
Hmm.
They build up that reason and
Yep.
then they're on their way. And I'm sure that in future books we'll come back to them. Uh, so that's why it was very well managed, this huge cast of thousands.
Hmm. That's why I don't believe her when she says she doesn't plot. I'm like, whatever. You have built a web. Something's going on, Nalini Singh.
Humans like are supposed to use 10% of their brains. She must be using like 20,
Hmm.
25% to hold all of this in there,
Yes, it's so much.
right?
It's so much.
In so many books.
It is. It is.
So we have
And
a couple of do you wanna talk about the antagonists?
sure, why not?
We do have a couple of antagonists or layers of antagonism that I think
Hmm.
end up being connected in a way. So
Yes.
we have an
Which I worried about because I was like, I don't see how. Are you telling a whole bunch of different stories? But I should have shut my mouth.
right? Yeah, she knows what she's doing. She's using more of her brain than we are. Blake is an arrow. He's a senior arrow, and he's one of the bad ones. He's one of the ones that silence was made for. He he's basically a serial killer, and so he's been. I think the fall of silence was bad for him, and it kind of unlocked these things. But he also has some sort of patron, some sort of higher person who helps him, and he does favors for, so they'll owe him. And then he decides he needs an apprentice. And this was like the heartbreaking part because
Oh
he
God.
chooses this poor girl, this arrow teenager who everyone ignores. She just flies under the radar and he grooms her. And it's like
Absolutely.
classic step by step in a very short period of time, but like grooming. And every time, and Blake and Beatrice is her name, were on the page, I was just like, my heart was breaking. I was like, please, someone notice Beatrice. And yeah,
Yeah. If I feel like this is Nalini Singh's villain construct.
Mm.
Because who was the guy in the first? Who was the first villain?
Enrico
Thank
Santoro?
you. This is Enrique, whatever his name was.
Right.
He was Caleb's villain. He
Yeah.
was Sasha's villain. He was Sister's villain.
Oh,
Just Mercy.
Brenna.
Right, Brenna. He was Brenna's villain. I think this is her
That's
cardboard cutout of a villain, and we got to see him working this
yeah.
time. I
Yeah.
keep saying, please stop bringing back Enrique like every time. But she's real. Oh, she's good at it. Oh God.
Yeah. And so then there's the other layer, the larger layer of antagonism, are the people responsible for Aiden's kidnapping and torture of him and Zara. And they're also kidnapping people all over the world. And they're sowing seeds of dissent between various human changeling psi
It's very
groups.
smart.
Yeah, it's another big organization has come into being over the past, I guess, year or two in this world,
It's the consortium.
the
Yeah.
consortium. Yeah, and so it's another big bad being set up. Uh, you always kind of need this shadow group, I think, to be working behind the scenes, and what all they want is power. They want to rule the world, I think they say at the end.
Yes, and it's not just because you would think, okay, is this just humans or is it psi? Is it change? It's changelings, humans, and psi that are in this group.
Yeah, they're working together. They don't know each other's identities. And like they figured out the what are they going to call it? The Trinity first. Because I think we're moving towards the place where the good guys are going to be all working together more seamlessly. This group is working together pretty seamlessly, although we have some shadowy figure at the top and we don't know their identity yet. There's like hints of people it could be that are mentioned, like Pax Marshall and some other people. So we get little hints that this is a well-known person, but we as the readers still don't know who they are yet, and they're pulling the strings. But still, they're getting everybody to work together.
They are, and it's really chilling. It really is chilling.
Mhm.
The things that they're doing. They set up the whole. No, they kidnapped Aden and Zaira. They also kidnapped some of the Black Sea
Mhm.
people to carry out some of their dirty work and hook them on drugs.
Right.
So they're doing awful things, and it looks like different arms are doing the awful things, but it's really one arm. And that's always the scary thing is when you start to see all these things that look so random aren't. They were all purposeful.
Very well planned, like mastermind level planning here. So whoever this person is at the top is a genius.
Unfortunately. And again, we have more allies now that we are gathering together on our side because we're the
Right?
good guys. But I think it also shows you because we've had 13 books of this world, and I think we were all rooting for the fall of silence, and it's fallen, and there are consequences. There's not only the consequences of we see the killers of the Psi race,
Mhm.
like what's going to happen with them, like they have some free reign now, but
Yeah.
we also see like the senior arrows and other elderly people who were in silence. They were like, this world is not for me, and there are some tragedies that happen there.
Right. Yeah, they don't feel like they can fit in, that they can even live in this world. And Aiden feels this responsibility to mirror it for them. Like he's always been in love with Zaira. I don't know your name. But he also feels like I also need to show my people what Vasek did, what Judd did, that it's possible for them to have lives, to fall in love, to have families. I want to model this for them.
Speaking of modeling, there is now a manual going around
The
the side.
manual.
Oh my god.
I highlighted that in my notes. I'm like, they got the manuals.
My god, I don't even know what to say.
So the manuals, well, apparently Judd had these manuals because he was the first arrow to fall in love and get mated. And I guess he passes them on to Basic, and Basic passes the manuals on to Aiden. And there's like this chain of sex manuals going
Oh my
around the
god.
sides to teach them what to do. Because this couple does not have any problem in the bedroom. They have no, and I know that's a pet peeve of yours. They're immediately know everything to do.
I was happy with this.
Okay.
Maybe I'm a pervert, but I was happy. Two adult virgins figuring this out. And I
Yeah.
was like, okay, I'm on board with this. Yeah, call me a pervert, but
No, not at all. I mean, I was on board with it too. Like, we don't need everybody to have the same experiences. So
yeah.
it wasn't like with Vasek or even with Judd. Like there are slight differences. There's these
Mhm,
variations, all arrows, but they just are different. They break silence differently.
mhm,
Their issues with intimacy are a little bit different. And it's really amazing to see people with it just play out individually, character based. It's coming from their backstory. And
mhm.
she just does such great character work to
Yeah,
make you really believable, and everybody's so distinct.
yeah, agreed. Being distinct, there were so I loved in the last book how you had the dog Rabbit,
Mhm.
how Rabbit was like it was constantly a pet the cat kind of moment, even though Rabbit's a dog.
Right.
And I felt like there were other cat-like creatures in this book. We mentioned Jojo, who was
Yes.
just perfection and just melted could melt any size heart.
Yeah.
It was just perfect.
Yeah.
But there's also we met Alejandro before, and I felt like Alejandro, the Psy Alejandro's a Psy who was broken.
Mhm.
He can only he has no more morals left, he has no more sense of right and wrong left, and he responds he's imprinted basically
Mhm.
on Zaira, and he will follow whatever commands Zaira gives him. And so when Zaira was gone in captivity, they had to basically sedate him because he was hurting himself. He would have hurt other people. But you watch him too, as he almost becomes like her pet. Like he's like, "What do you need me to do? I'm going to do what you tell me to do." But you also see as the side children and youth are starting to come out of their shells and they're learning how to play and they're learning how to think for themselves because at the young age they were taught you need orders, you need to follow orders before you are allowed to have any kind of independent thought. And it was almost like Alejandro was going through that too, and he starts to on his own without an order he starts to play with
Mm.
the kids, and I just thought that that was just so beautiful.
Yeah, and there's a little hope for him. They're like, "Will he ever be, quote unquote normal?" He was damaged by this drug, and they're like, they were saying no, but I don't know. There's healing happening here.
There was healing happening. Just like the Black Sea, that whole subplot was these sea changelings, these water changelings, they were coming to disrupt what was happening with the arrows. And one of them was a mom, and her daughter got taken, which absolutely lights a fire under Zaira because of her childhood. And Zaira promises, I'm going to find your child. I'm going to bring your child back and I'm going to destroy anybody who was involved with this. However, um, the mom, they put them on drugs in order to
Mhm.
get them to do what they want, the bad guys, the consortium. And the mom, she becomes damaged almost like Alejandro became damaged.
Yeah, I mean, she has these memory issues. Um, and I wonder, she didn't go into it at the end of the book. I mean, that when they're reunited, they immediately jump into the sea because they have to shift. But I was wondering, like, is she going to be okay to take care of her child? It seemed like she remembered her child. She couldn't remember anything else because of the drugs. And yeah, that was extremely sad.
Yeah, it was very sad. I did want to point out too, so speaking of attachments, so the first attachment that we see aside from Zaira being completely attached to Aden as a child, we then the next attachment that we see is her and Alejandro, and then we see her become attached to Rabbit, where she was like, I in her monologue, she's like, I even threw the stick with Rabbit. I love because everybody loves Rabbit, and then
Yeah.
you absolutely see her melt with JoJo. But
Hmm.
then because there's like no like whenever I'm reading a book and there's no sisterhood, there's no female friendships, it kind of makes me squicky. And you see Zara and Mion, the Black Sea Alpha, who's a woman,
Right.
they start to develop a tentative friendship because they're both these two strong women.
Yeah. And Mian is really described very almost Nikita Duncanish. Like we're not
Mhm,
sure what's going on with her. She's very cold. She's very, but she sees something of herself in Zyra.
mhm.
And
She
so she,
says it.
yeah, she reaches out. So, and I think that Zyra's starting to have a friendship with Ivy Jane also. And Ivy obviously is just emoting all over everybody. So she can be friends with anybody. But yeah, those are the two main female relationships. And then starting maybe with some other arrows, like Christabel is mentioned and
Mhm,
Narida, I think is another one.
mhm.
So there is a lot of hope. There's a lot of ground being laid for relationships and friendships.
Yeah, yeah. I did want to talk a bit about the progression, like the levels of intimacy
Mhm.
of Zaira and Aden, because I remember when they were held in captivity and they're fighting their way out and they're broken off from the net, which is really scary for Sai. There's one point where because she feels so alone because they're used to having people in their head,
Right.
and Aiden hugs her, which is
Yeah.
hard for her to accept. And I remember there was a line, something like, because she felt like being held, if someone held you, that was like a prison. They're holding you down. But
Oh,
this hold is different. It was to bring comfort. It was to bring pleasure. And
right.
so they're I don't usually like slow burns, but this made so much sense to me. The pace at which their touch and their levels of intimacy unfolded, and that's where it started. It was with that hug.
Yeah, and I think he'd been watching the changelings. He understood that touch is a way to ground you and to comfort, especially when she felt isolated from the psychic network. And for
Mhm.
her, being alone, being caged is the worst thing ever because of her childhood.
Yeah.
So he knew exactly what to do, but because he was watching the other races and how they interacted.
And you have the whole he falls first trope because he admits that he wants her.
Hmm.
But she doesn't think that this is possible because she believes that she is a broken monster. And for her, like love was literally violent for her. Like the first kiss, she bit him. She drew blood.
She does. Well, was that even a kiss? It was a bite. And she's fighting back constantly. And so it's like they
Mhm.
have the trust. They have so much of the relationship there, but she doesn't have the trust in herself. And so she's going to sort of bite back, like fight back like a cornered animal because she
Yes,
doesn't
yes.
trust
They
herself.
even to the point where they're like wrestling.
Yeah. But she I'm gonna say she never harms him, but she does kind of lose it and fights him
Mhm.
when there's an attempt on his life and he holds her back from murdering the person that tried to kill him. She loses it. Like so it's not false fear. Like she does have something very wrong with her.
Mhm.
And he has basic teleport them into the desert so that she can calm down, which I think was just a great moment.
I felt like the Blake and Beatrice subplot
Mhm.
was like the flip coin of Zara and Aiden. Zara's a sociopath. Blake's a sociopath. But Aiden tempers her and tries to hold her steady, where Beatrice tries to mold herself and be what Blake wants her to be. It was like flipped, and for me, you could see that there were dangers to both, but you were rooting for one and you weren't rooting for the other.
Because Ira and Blake are not the same. She might be a sociopath or a psychopath. I don't know the difference.
I don't know the
But hers
difference.
is very focused. Hers is only focused on someone who's trying to harm Aiden or probably
Mhm,
other people that she cares about.
mhm.
So she's not doing it for pleasure. She's not getting off on hurting people.
Right.
She's like, no, I'm protecting. And then the protecting goes too far because she loses
Mhm.
it in the
Yes.
darkness.
Yes. Whereas Blake wanted someone to witness
Hmm.
his violence.
Yeah, he wanted to mold and teach Beatrice to be just what Enrique was trying to do with Caleb. I mean, that desire to share your
Your darkness.
proclivities. Yeah, I guess. Misery loves company? I don't know. But so that there are differences. I can kind of see the parallels, but yeah, there are
Mhm,
definitely differences. And even though Blake is an arrow and he's kind of hiding his stuff his darkness, everyone kind of feels it. Like Zyra is like, I don't like Blake. I don't like being near him. But Aiden feels like he has to give everybody an equal chance because
yeah.
they were all
They all
ordered
did
to
bad
do
things.
yeah, to do horrible things. So he needs proof, they need evidence, but yeah, Blake gives everybody the icks.
So when and they all know something's going on with Blake.
Mhm.
And then when Zyra, because Zyra can see like something's off with Beatrice. Like Beatrice, again, one of the reasons that Blake chose her was because she was always at the back. Nobody ever noticed her. There were no notes left about her or anything.
Ah.
And then Zyra notices that Beatrice is trying to hide that she's injured because so Blake takes um Beatrice to interrogate. You can't see me, but I'm doing the air quotes thing to interrogate was it a human? Was it a
It
changeling?
was
I'm
the
not
human
sure.
that they
It was a human.
kidnapped. Yeah,
So he takes her to interrogate this human who has done nothing about nothing.
right.
And so Beatrice is trying her hardest because she wants to impress this guy. She wants to be something. And
Mhm.
she's trying her hardest to interrogate this woman and get the information out, and it's just not working. And Blake beats her up and then basically bloodies the woman. He's like, "This is what you do."
Right. And Beatrice thinks this is a sanctioned mission because this is a senior arrow. And so yeah, she's at the training and trying to hide her injuries, but Zyra is like, I know what someone who's beaten looks like, and gets her to open up. And I was like, at that point, I was like, oh my gosh, thank goodness, because we know it's like there's a ticking time clock, in 2 more days, Blake was gonna bring her back and she's gonna have to torture this
Mhm.
poor human woman. And
But it was another flip coin thing for me because that was Zyra when she was younger. Beatrice was Zyra when
mm,
she was younger. And Beatrice, you can see the character growth because not only does Beatrice notice and reach out to her, but she gives her a hug, just like
yeah.
Aiden did with her.
She's learning. She learns really quickly. She learns
Mhm.
how to give comfort to the younger kids who need it. There's this other kid who had come up, or was that Aiden? And he'd broken the rules and he thought he was going to get punished. And they're
Mhm.
like,
No, there's another kid.
yeah. So, Zara really proves that she's kind of got the heart and soul of the of the arrows. Like
Mhm.
Aiden is leadership, he's got the big ideas and he's got
Mhm.
the conscience and
Yep.
a good character. Zyra has the compassion and the heart. She doesn't believe she has a good
You can
character.
believe it. But we see it. She keeps proving it.
Right. Exactly. Like
That is the big.
Caleb did. Honestly.
Yes. Yeah. Look at you. You always bring it back to Caleb. But that's the subtext. That's what we love so much about writing. Like, we were taught screenwriting first. And well, with screenwriting, you can't have all this inner monologue. You can't have,
Mhm.
well, I'm thinking about how much I have changed. You have to show it.
Yeah.
And the beauty of subtext is when you believe something else, but you show us the
Mhm.
opposite. And she's just in her head. I'm a monster. There's genetic craziness in me that I can't change. This is who
Mhm.
I am. And she's not modeling that behavior.
Right. That's the good tension of the writing, yeah, they're always trying to put that in there.
So we talk a lot about how our heroes and often our heroines are often the best at what it is that they are. But Aiden, he's just like, he's this middle of the road, kind of telekinetic, kind of a medic. He's not special, right?
Right? Yeah. Oh, and they have these, newspaper articles about, like, yeah, he's like a 3 point something on the scale of this, he's not very good, why is he the leader? Is he really the leader? And we have had hints in previous books that there is a secret power he has, and we finally get to see his secret
Near the
power
end of the book.
at the end, when we've almost forgotten that, he has it, which is always nice, and it's something we've never even heard of before. It's
Yeah.
like a brand new power that he's got. So Aiden is a mirror, which means he can draw power from other people that he's connected to, but basically anyone he could, if he chooses to, and amplify it and use it. So like these people keep trying to kill him. What it's like the Matrix. Bullets are coming. He holds up his hand. He stops the bullets. Then he pushes the bullets back where they came from to shoot to kill the
Mm.
shooters. It was just like a great display of power. He-
Nalini Singh, when was this book put out?
I
When
know.
was The Matrix?
This was
I am
2015.
not mad.
She had a couple of years of inspiration, but yeah, this kind of mind. So he's pulling from Zyra and Bassic and three other side that he has a like an agreement with beforehand to do it in case of emergency because eventually it will drain them all. Uh, but yeah, like he did this huge display of power, and it's like why that it answers the question of why he didn't do this earlier or why he hasn't always been doing this because there are consequences to it that he's very cognizant of. But when he does it, it's amazing.
Unfortunately, at one point, he does get hit.
Yes, he does get shot. His jugular gets blown out, like he gets shot in the neck. And this is when Zyra seriously dragons out. But she is able to prove to herself
Mhm.
that she is not actually a monster,
Yeah.
which is the great thing.
She holds her demons inside and she goes on the mission to get intel to figure out what happened, because they still don't know who's behind the consortium at this
Mhm.
point.
Right.
And she goes to town and she figures it out. And I really loved how we were in everybody's head. And Nalini Singh, I loved, hated this, and she kept us from Aden.
Oh,
Kept
yeah.
us. She kept Zaira from
Mhm.
Aden. Wow, and I always say this in a bad way, but I don't mean it in a bad way. She Scooby Dooed it. Meaning, like, what, at the end of Scooby Doo when they unmask the villain, the villain starts to tell us everything that's happening.
Oh,
I
yeah.
usually mean that very derogatorily. I don't mean it this time. But she's gathering all that information and she's in there figuring out this is this is what's happening. This is
Mhm.
who's behind it. And then we come back to Aiden.
So yeah, Judd is brought in to put Aiden back together again. And this whole I think one of the things is that Zaira has not accepted the mating bond basically. Like there's a psychic bond that Aiden has put forth that she hadn't 100% accepted yet. And I think that
So,
after
yeah.
he's shot is when she finally accepts it
So
100%.
she's trying to connect to him
Right.
and he's out.
Yeah.
So she can't. And she keeps trying and keeps trying and she feels so cold and so alone. And she keeps trying and keeps trying, and then it snaps into place.
Yeah, they go on a date. That's what it is. After he's better, they go on a date in India and she finally accepts it 100%.
It's perfectly paced. Even with all the party lining, it was perfectly
And, like,
paced.
there's so much else that happened. Nikita got shot at one point,
Yeah, I didn't even take notes on that, but yeah.
and then Sasha rushes in,
She's fine.
and Anthony is, like Anthony is at Nikita's side, so we
Of
knew something
course
was
he is. I wonder
happening
why.
there, and people are like, "Hmm." Other people are, like, starting to notice that Anthony is showing up, like, yeah, 10 toes down for Nikita. Yeah, there's a bunch of stuff that happens. We check in we see Dev, we see Max, we see, like, almost everybody that we've
We
had a
see
book
Sienna.
for.
Sienna comes to help with
Sienna?
the helping the Psy youth to
Mhm.
adjust.
Right. Walker is there, and
Yep.
Walker is kind of like Aiden's adopted
Walker's
dad.
amazing. Yeah, because his parents, this is something that I didn't understand. His Aiden's parents were arrows.
Right.
And they put him in as a sleeper for the rebellion. I did not understand what that meant.
It just meant that they were the initiators of this rebellion of the arrows. Like, they were saying, "Ming does not have our back. We need to do something different." We have this son who, has I don't know why they thought that he could do it, but it was very
Yeah.
clear that Aiden was an old soul from a young age, and he was raised by these people to be like, "Okay, when you see." They didn't believe that he could be the leader. I think they were training him to find someone who could lead them once we get away from Ming, and we're gonna fake our deaths and go do some other stuff. You're
Mhm.
9 years old. You stay here as a sleeper agent and carry out the revolution.
But you know what? They said something. I think his mom said something along the lines of, "We raised you to something, something, something." And
Mhm.
Aiden's like, "Y'all didn't raise me at all."
Yeah.
It was Walker. It was Walker that
Yes.
showed him how to protect himself. It was Walker that saw the mirroring.
Mhm.
Walker did it all.
Yeah. Yeah. Walker is the best. I
He
really do love
is.
Walker.
He is the best.
Yeah, there's so much was happening, so many characters, but I didn't feel overwhelmed ever. I felt
Mhm.
like I was in a marathon of storytelling,
Mhm.
not a sprint. This is definitely a
Mhm.
marathon. But yeah, the pacing was great and the layout of information. And because it's book 14 and we know many of these people, and then there's a bunch of new people, and how she made it so that it wasn't overwhelming, I have no idea. I have to go back and like study this. But I really enjoyed this book.
Mhm. It was a good one. It was a good entry.
Yeah. Even if it's not like strictly a romance, which I don't think anybody's mad at,
Nope.
honestly.
I'm not mad. I would be the one to get mad.
Yeah. Because one of the tenets of romance is if you can take the romance out, it's not a romance. But with this
Right.
one, they could have still remained friends and the whole story would have still worked. They could have
It
been like just best friends who had each other's backs, who would die for each other, and the story still would have
Yep.
worked.
It absolutely would have. Good job. Now, I think like when you constantly practice your craft, you
Hmm.
find pockets. And this is why I like to talk about craft so much. You find pockets of things where you could like, let me dig down this road for a minute and see what will happen. And sometimes
Mhm.
you get it wrong, but you know what? You learn a lesson when you get it wrong, and you can find your way back onto the path, and you keep going. Like, there's some of these books that I did not enjoy, but I keep going because she keeps innovating, she keeps pushing herself and pushing her stories and pushing these characters. So I'm here for it. I'm not here for the thrillers.
Oh, the thrillers. I mean, I haven't read the new one, but it's on my list. The one they're good too. I mean, if you're not a thriller person, but
I'm
like,
not a thriller person. That's why I stopped reading the Angel books, because they are very thriller heavy.
oh yeah, I think I don't know why I stopped reading the Angel books. I did enjoy all the Angel books, but it was a lot in my brain. Maybe I'll go back to them now that I'm in my thriller era.
Thriller era. I have never left my romance era.
But the romance
I got
era,
here at 12.
there's not, yeah, I'm never out of the romance era, but I dip into other eras and
I
have
like it
extra
here in
era.
Romance Landia. I'm going to stay and be happy. So speaking of, is there anything that you are reading or watching that you are absolutely loving and everybody should know about it?
Yes. So I'm like barely on TikTok. I don't actually look at TikTok and I barely post. So apparently this is a big TikTok book. I found it some other way. I can't remember now. But Assistant to the Villain is the name of the book. And it is this fantasy world where basically the main character needs a job and she becomes assistant to the villain of the kingdom who is trying to thwart the king in all kinds of ways. So it's more of a slow burn. It ends in a cliffhanger, I will warn you. But
Oh.
the next one comes out this fall,
Hmm.
and it's sort of the slow progression of this very sunny, bright character who works for the villain and falls in love with him. And by the end, she's still that same personality, but we're maybe seeing the origin story of a villain herself.
Oh,
Really,
interesting.
it's really cool, and I did enjoy it, and I'm waiting with bated breath for the sequel that
That's
comes out
really
this fall.
interesting.
Yeah. What about you, Inez? Anything that you're reading or watching that you are loving?
Okay, so I was on TikTok too. But I had already downloaded this book. But I'm audio first. I've become audio first now that I, wear glasses because I'm getting older and my eyes are like, what's that word? So I was on Krusty Cole TikTok, and her narrator, Robert Petkoff, who is just one of my bedtime story readers, I saw him reading the latest book that I had downloaded and hadn't started reading yet because I was waiting for him. I was waiting for him, and he was reading the book. Like, we saw him like in studio, and he was reading the book.
Ooh,
And so then, of course, I've already purchased the ebook.
right.
And Krusty Cole is traditional, so she is not like a $2.99 ebook or anything like that. So I spent dollars on the ebook, and I saw the audiobook had finally got there, and I bought the audiobook and I listened to it. I woke up this morning and I was like, I'm awake because, I'm getting older. So I'm waking up at like 5 o'clock just because, maybe I have to go to the bathroom or I'm just awake.
We're
Hot
not
flash,
that old.
whatever.
Come on.
And I put on this book. It was like a 5-hour book. So it was like maybe 40, 50,000 words. And I just listened to it. I listened to it I listened to it from 5 o'clock. I got up. I was like, should I stop listening to this book? No, I got up and I walked, took a walk, an hour-long walk, listened to this book, came home, had breakfast, listened to this book. I like 5 minutes before I got on with you, Les, I finished the book and it was wonderful. Cressley Cole she's had some like tragedies in her life over the past couple of years. So her writing schedule went really down. And I didn't really like the very last Immortals After Dark book that she put out. I got very confused.
Mhm.
But this one, sorry, I should probably tell you the name. It was The Witch Queen of Halloween, which was not released on Halloween. I don't know.
Eh,
Whatever. Doesn't matter.
Is it Immortals After Dark? Is it in the
It is
series?
Immortals After Dark. It's a witch and a demon. And if you know the Immortals After Dark, demons, they're looking for their fated mates. They are immortals and they're looking for their fated mates. And the only way that they know for sure that a woman is their fated mate is they have to attempt her, which means they have to boink her. And so the heroine is just like, no. It's so good. And she's a witch, and witches have reputations in this world. So she's a witch, he's a demon, and he's like, but I really think that you might be. And they get trapped in a haunted house on Halloween, and it's perfection. It's so good, so good. And she announced that her the next Immortals After Dark book is coming out, and she's back on her. She's totally back on her game, and so I'm now really excited.
Ooh, so could this work as a standalone?
Yes,
If you haven't,
you do
for
not.
instance,
You
read
do
the
not
series
even have
in
to have
10 years.
read. Yeah, it's I don't even know what number we are on in Immortals After Dark,
Mhm.
but you do not need to have read any of the Immortals After Dark to come into this. It will make you want to go to the beginning and understand everything that's happening, but no, you do not need to read anything in order to hop into this book. Highly recommend.
Awesome. Yeah, 'cause yeah, I went up to book 11 or 12, and that was 10 years ago probably, so
Yeah,
I'm out of
yeah,
date on that series as well.
yeah. Give it a try. It might make you want to do at least pick it up where you left off, if not do a complete reread, because I'm gonna do a complete reread before
Really?
the next book comes out. Yes, it will be
I
my
need a
first.
recap. I need so re listeners, if there is a recap, so I don't have to actually reread 100 books, um 'cause seriously, who had I'm doing it here because of the podcast. I probably
Mhm,
would have eventually, I don't
mhm,
know, but, like, yeah, this has been a good effort, but it's a lot to do to reread
mhm.
all of these books in the series. Because I think about, "Oh, I stopped reading Black Dagger Brotherhood." Is that still happening? Probably,
It
I
is
don't
still happening. Zeta's daughter has a book.
oh gosh. Alright, yeah. Sometimes life just feels too short.
And now when we're on second generations too.
Right? Yeah. Well, I'm glad for them. These long series, I'm glad these authors are still putting them out, have the readers, and probably finding new ones or bringing
Finding
back
new
old
ones.
readers to come
Yeah,
back into the fold.
uh,
Yeah.
I love what we do. I love this world. I love Romancelandia, and I love that you guys come and you listen to us. So thank you, thank you, thank you so much for joining us this week. Please let us know what you think. You can leave a comment on YouTube with your thoughts on the episode. You can share it with a friend who loves romance, and please rate and review us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify.
And you can always check out our book schedule on our website, inkandmagic.net, so that you can read along with us. We will be taking a brief summer break after we finish season 1 of Side Changeling, but check our website so you'll know when we're back for season 2. And we will see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.